I want to start this video off by saying that we are dealing with a rumour here, and a rumour is quite literally defined as a currently circulating story or report of uncertain or doubtful truth. Now, a couple of people have covered the rumour that's been going around that Halo is due a hard reboot. And under normal circumstances, it'd be a rumour. I would just take it at face value and just drop it, and it would be no problem, as would most of us. The issue, however, is that our trust in Halo and the developers have unfortunately been broken so often, so many times, over so many years, that now even the slightest hint at a negative development in the rumour mill often gains traction to a point that it actually starts to convince people that it's true, that it's going to happen. This most likely is not the case. But you can't blame us for hearing a rumour like this and it gaining traction. As I've said, there have been numerous mistakes that have been made by 343 Industries over their tenure with Halo. Now, that's not to say that more recently things have been bad, because they haven't. In fact, more recently, Halo has been in some of the best shape it's been in for the past, 13, 14 years. But that doesn't detract from the case that we have unfortunately struggled arduously through failure after failure, lack of correspondence and communication, promises that are ultimately broken. And without flogging a dead horse here, I think it's necessary to actually retrospectively look at, unfortunately, the times that we've been let down as a community, or that something has happened that has caused friction and distemperament throughout the community. Now, bearing in mind there's no real order to these per se, but let's kick things off with at least one of the earliest problems that I remember seeing, and that was the art style change, specifically the change to the elites in Halo 4. Now again, that was explained away as being a different phenotype, but it doesn't change the fact that the sudden and inexplicable change of art style rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And on top of that, it wasn't just the elites. The Forerunner design and architectural style changed dramatically from being somewhat worn and gritty and ancient and mysterious to being highly polished and shiny and metallic and chrome and glowy and floaty, all of which was a massive departure from the Forerunner architectural style that we'd all grown so accustomed to. Now again, over time, that particular architectural style has somewhat merged with the older architectural style, and the result is something quite aesthetically pleasing, but again, doesn't detract from the fact that it was a slap in the face at the time. The Jackals similarly got a strange phenotype update or design change that again was explained away as being just a different phenotype of Jackals. And even the Master Chief himself had his armour massively changed between Halo 3 and Halo 4. Now, I'm not saying that I disliked the Halo 4 armour style, in fact I quite liked the Halo 4 armour style. It will never quite replace the most iconic Mark 6 armour platform, but it was still aesthetically quite interesting, and the higher level of fidelity and the way things sort of joined together and the tanky mechanised appearance of it was quite pleasing, for me at least. But again, it upset a lot of people, and again it was explained away as nanomachines, son. Next, the reveal of the Didact, quite clearly translating that the Forerunners are a different species from humans. Now again, it was heavily implied back in the Bungie era that the Forerunners were just an ancient version of humanity. However, it was also during Bungie's tenure that they started sowing the seeds of the possibility that they were in fact a different species. In fact, the terminals in Halo 3 themselves hint heavily towards them being a completely separate species. But nevertheless, suddenly confronting the Didact in all his awesome glory quite clearly outlined that they were a completely different species. And again, the reveal of the Didact, for me at least, was a wow moment, because I had read the Forerunner trilogy of books before I played Halo 4, so that moment that he descended out of the cryptum was an oh shit, this is the Didact moment. But again, just because my opinion of that scene was oh wow, doesn't mean that everybody's was. And bear in mind, some of the big disappointments aren't just based in the lore either. When MCC first launched, basically nothing worked. It's working now, but it wasn't for far, far too long. The menus were glitching out, people were having trouble with getting the campaigns running, there were system crashes, people couldn't find matchmaking games with each other. And when they could, they were limited to basically only 2 game types and a couple of maps. Now, don't get me wrong, it's no mean feat blending together the game engines of 4 or 5 different games, but you would have at least expected that MCC would have been fully and comprehensively tested for these kinds of mistakes before it was launched, rather than receiving MCC in the state that it did as consumers. And again, we can't necessarily entirely pin this on 343 Industries. This again could have come from further up. This could have been a corporate decision at Microsoft or Xbox Game Studios to force MCC out at a specific time. And again, the corporate decisions higher up, that's something that really 343 Industries doesn't really have much control over. And I kind of hate, but kind of don't hate to say it, but since many of the major management people from 343 Industries have stepped down, 343 Industries has actually been doing pretty damn well with Halo. Now, that could be a coincidence, or it could not. I'm just highlighting the fact that there is a coincidence. Whether or not it's a causality is, well, I'll leave that to you to decide. Halo 5 launched, and the split between Master Chief's levels and Fireteam Osiris' levels was massively disproportionate. You only got to play sort of 2 or 3 levels with Chief and Blue Team, and ultimately the fact that they didn't do anything really, anything significant with Blue Team, one of the oldest and most established Spartan teams in the lore, is beyond me. Why they didn't do more with them. I mean, they're such a dynamic and capable team. They could have done so much, and yet we got so little. Cortana's death being basically for nothing when she was brought back in Halo 5 as the leader of the Created, that was again kind of a kick in the teeth for a scene that was very poignant and very built up to and quite emotional in Halo 4, was ultimately rendered moot in the very next game. Even the evil Cortana isn't a particularly great narrative, and I would argue it was executed poorly. I have to admit, even to this day, I've only played Halo 5's campaign through from start to finish once. Just once. And considering that I've played every single Halo game, basically the day that it's launched, since the start of this franchise, and my job is to make lore and content on it, the fact that I only played one single playthrough of one of the games kind of speaks volumes as to just how detached from the Halo 5 storyline I felt. While we're on the subject of Halo 5's campaign, no split screen. Now, split screen was a statute of Halo since the earliest days of Halo. The very way that a lot of us got into Halo was through playing split screen with our friends around a big CRT television. And split screen ever since has been a huge part of Halo. So why they thought in Halo 5 they would get rid of that entirely is beyond me. But it also goes a step further, acknowledging the mistake and promising to never do it again. And then when Infinite launched, they dropped split screen again, breaking that original promise. Onwards from that, the advertisement campaign from Halo 5 as Chief going rogue was such a compelling and interesting take on the Halo storyline. I would have loved to fight in Chief's armor against other humans who are coming to attack me if that's what it took to keep Chief's narrative being pushed forward. Because ultimately, while his motivations would have been misunderstood and misconstrued, and maybe he would have been viewed as being a rogue Spartan in that regard because he's kind of addressing a higher calling, he would still be morally right in what he's doing, but be morally ambiguous to the rest of humanity. That kind of dichotomy, that kind of duality in his behaviours would have been absolutely fascinating to explore, and yet that isn't really what we got. We basically got Fireteam Osiris following Blue Team for 3/4 of a game. When Halo Infinite was first released, it had a really clean, polished, very bright coloured, borderline cartoony art style. We didn't like it. Luckily, 343 paid attention and adjusted it, which meant that the next time we saw it, it was more grungy and more gritty, and Chief's iconic armour had made a return. It was all looking like it was heading in the right direction. The problem is that next reveal was also the gameplay demo, and that was in a less than finished fashion because there were clouds that were popping in and out of existence and textures at distance that weren't rendering, and even the hair on the brutes was non-existent. That's where the Craig meme came from, for crying out loud. When we finally did get Halo Infinite, massively truncated campaign. There's evidence that they planned a lot more. There are islands in the campaign that we just don't visit because there was probably likely content there at some point that was ultimately cut. Despite the 6-year development cycle for Halo Infinite, we still got a massively truncated campaign that basically just boils down to the second level of Halo CE reimagined. Yeah, I've got a series on my ideas and throwing around some concepts for what could have been for Halo Infinite's DLC, which brings me neatly to Halo Infinite's campaign DLC that was cancelled completely. A game that was planned as being a 10-year platform, and a game that is sold predominantly for its campaign, not having any campaign DLC. Halo Infinite's multiplayer problems are still relatively fresh in everyone's mind. The problems with the title screens, problem with loading into games, problem with games disconnecting and servers dropping out, limited game types, limited maps, limited content, no seasonality. When they announced armor coatings and basically taking away the idea of player customization, yeah, that argument has settled down a little bit since, but it's still there, it's still present, and we still can't change our primary and secondary colours, and we still don't have cross-core coatings. Even the paid-for content, the customization that was launched with Halo Infinite, was disproportionately expensive and relatively lackluster. In fact, there are some coatings, some visors, that are basically identical to ones that are built into the game that you can unlock for free, but that you'd end up having to pay $10 for basically the same thing. And that's not to mention all of the other game crashes and problems that have been systemic in Halo Infinite until more recently. The Halo TV show. Now, again, I quite liked it, but I do understand why many didn't. In fact, in a recent video from Hidden Xperia, he made a really good point that likely the reason people didn't like it is because of a weird kind of uncanny valley, where the show had taken specific tropes and themes of Halo, but completely reimagined them, and ending up only being kind of a vague approximation to the original. And again, this plays then into the concerns over the rumours of a hard reboot. I mean, even Halo Infinite was technically supposed to be a soft reboot, basically being an extended version of Halo CE. They were trying to take the recipe of Halo CE and bring it into the modern era with modern game mechanics, a more modern art style, and a slightly updated narrative. And again, the problems don't just go so far as to what we see directly as the consumer, but on the back end there are also issues. For example, building Halo Infinite in a bespoke game engine from the get-go, and then hiring temporary staff to create content for it. There would be a huge learning curve for newbies starting at 343 Industries to try to understand this new game engine, and just as they're kind of getting to grips with things and starting to create content, their contract ends and they leave, which basically then means that the next people that come in to replace them have to go through the same learning curve and then try to finish what the others had already started. Indeed, even the fact that we receive new games, it's great, it really truly is, but we've also asked on numerous occasions for there to be spin-off games. Yet they cancelled Halo Wars 3. We've never got an ODST 2. Even people asking for a Halo 3 anniversary. Now, I don't necessarily agree entirely that we need a new Halo 3 anniversary, so to speak, but having the cutscenes updated to kind of blur level cinematics and maybe some additional content put into the game itself with a slight graphical revamp would still be appreciated, and it surely wouldn't take that much in the way of time, energy and resources. It even doesn't have to be that specifically. Flood Horror Games, a game focusing on the Spartan 3s in their SPI armour earlier on in the war. Any of these kind of spin-off games would be greatly appreciated and could be handled by studios outside of 343 Industries. And despite the community's numerous requests at new spin-off games and new journeys and new stories to be told, we still don't have anything. Again, on the back end, there's huge amounts of corporate oversight for the franchise, which leads to an unhealthy work culture alongside deteriorating game quality for the end user. The cancelled multiplayer narrative that was just cut and axed and thrown away for... well, the only explanation we were given was so that they could focus their resources elsewhere. But again, if there was more transparency about where those resources were being focused, it wouldn't be so much of a kick in the teeth. And even that in and of itself, the fact that we've asked numerous times to be more transparent in their communication with the community, and then for a short time they're a little bit more transparent, and then they again go into radio silence and we have no information, and then ultimately frustrations boil over in the community until the next time that we demand that there's more transparency. Again, this has significantly improved in the last few months. And again, that's not an exhaustive list of the problems that we've had, but you have to agree that's a lot of issues to swallow over the 13, 14 years that 343 Industries has had tenure over Halo. And now, most recently, these rumours and concerns over a hard reboot, which basically involves throwing everything done so far and releasing it with new voice actors, stories, direction, theming, narrative, the works. But again, the only real evidence that this is happening is from two single tweets, technically posts, posted on Twitter. Technically not Twitter, it's now called X. What the fuck? And yet, those two tweets, the community grabbed and ran with it. And now we're in this circumstance where people are genuinely humouring the idea that there might be a hard reboot coming for Halo. So I want to categorically say right now, I don't think in any capacity that Halo is due a hard reboot. I think it's extraordinarily unlikely that that's even been considered or spoken about at 343 Industries or Xbox Game Studios. We are very much dealing with a simple rumour here, not based really on any solid fact or evidence. However, I will also hasten to add that you can't be surprised that the community at large would hear this rumour and assume it to be true after we've experienced 13 years of the problems I've just outlined in this video. That kind of shared experience between the community and the developer, 343 Industries, has significantly broken the trust of the community in 343 Industries. So when rumours like this do crop up, it's all the more likely that large quantities of people have believed them because there have been so many mistakes in the past, and even those mistakes haven't been learned from, but indeed repeated. It is an unfortunate reality that 343 Industries have seemingly made every possible mistake in the book, and every step of the way have demonstrated that they haven't learned from those previous mistakes. This has had a knock-on effect of breaking the trust between the developer and the community. So much so, in fact, that it's now very few and far between that we actually trust anything that they say, and we are always expecting the worst when rumours like this begin to circulate. But it isn't all doom and gloom. I think all of us have noticed a significant uptick in the quality of Halo in the past few months. Now that we've achieved seasonality with Halo Infinite, it is in a better state now than it's been since its launch. And yes, it should have been in this state when it launched, but that wasn't what we were dished out. That wasn't the cards that we were given. But we are now finally in this position. The addition of Husky Raid and Infection, and even bringing back some of the ultimate classic maps from Halo games gone by in the squad battle game type. Even in Husky Raid, is it Mini Hala? basically Valhalla scaled down so you feel like a giant Spartan. When I first played that game type, I was absolutely rolled up for half of the game, and I haven't been in that kind of a state playing Halo in many, many years. It seems to me, and again, I said this earlier on, it seems to me that there seems to be a coincidence that the top people, the managers, the bosses, however you want to call them, at 343 Industries stepped down, and then those who were left at the studio stepped up. And since that's happened, the quality of Halo as a whole, not just with Halo Infinite, but with MCC as well, has gone from strength to strength. We've got a long way yet to go. There is no doubt about it, and unfortunately we have had our trust broken on numerous occasions, which leads us to quite readily believe these rumours even though they're unfounded. But the very fact that Halo Infinite is in some of the best shape it's been in since it launched, we've achieved seasonality, and it would be great if this is if the season we've just got is kind of the shape of things to come, that every new season now will get maybe a new armor core, some new game types, some new completely new maps, but also some of the old classic maps brought back in as well, ever expanding the content of Halo Infinite. If that's the shape of things to come, I'm all for it, because the way that Halo Infinite is shaped up recently has been fantastic, and I've been immensely enjoying playing both campaign and multiplayer in recent weeks and months. And MCC is now in a great place, with the mod support, the cut content that's being brought back in, and the Master Chief Collection now functioning in a fantastic way. It's drawing people back into the fold. The things I'm seeing people do in MCC is just phenomenal, and you can see there is a massive revival happening with MCC and Halo Infinite, so it isn't all doom and gloom. But I wanted to make this video to address a couple of things. One, there is a rumour going around that Halo is going to have a hard reboot. Two, I don't think there's any substance in that rumour whatsoever. I don't think we're due for a hard reboot at all. 3, you can kind of understand why people would believe that there's substance to that rumour, considering all of the things that have happened over the past 13 years that have broken our trust. And 4, although all of those things have happened over these past 13 years, Halo now is in some of the best shape it's been in for over a decade, and that cannot be brushed over or overlooked in any great regard. Call it coincidence because the old heads of 343 have gone, or just that where they finally got into their stride and they're getting things figured out. Call it whatever you want, but the reality of the situation is this. Rumour, no substance, don't think it's going to happen. Yes, we've been in a bad place. We've been in a very bad place with Halo for very long, and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. But now we're here, and Halo is looking to be in some of the best shape it's been in for a long, long time. And personally, I'm not really one to hold a grudge. I don't see the point in getting angry and resentful over mistakes made in the past with the franchise when I'm right here in the present and things are looking pretty damn good. I have always and will continue to make content on things that I'm passionate about, that I enjoy, because the second that I start making content on things that I hate, and that becomes my new mode of content, eventually I start hating the very creation of that content itself. And then it's just a downward spiral to the point that I don't want to be a content creator anymore, and that sure as hell isn't happening. So in summary, yeah, there is a rumour, but it's just that. A rumour. MCC's in a damn good place right now. Get on there and play some. Halo Infinite is a damn good place right now. Get on there and play some. Because I know I'll be doing that, and you should be doing that too. It's time that we let all this crap, all of the mistakes, all of the problems, all of the stress, all of the heartache that we've had over these years, it's time we lay that to rest and enjoy what we've got now, here and now. Because if we're always looking back, we'll never be looking forward. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider smashing the like button and leave a comment below on what you'd like me to cover next. Big shout out to my patrons, Spartan10148, the Metarch of my installation, Falcon, Prophet Bear, Mikhail, Sophia, and Ashley, my dutiful monitors. Darian, Scarab, Spartan0137, Anthony, Ghost, Aaron, Chris, Jacob, Sean, Element Zero, Somatic, Jordan J3, Dan, Mr. Keys, Directal, Gunslinger, Jacob, Bandmill, Echo, Evermore, Officer Cat, and Personal Devil, my diligent sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers. And all the other patrons who have jumped aboard to support the channel. It means more to me than I can accurately put into words. Another shout out to my Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members, Spartan137, Jacob, Schmitty, Talia, Fenrir and Born Stella, and all the other YouTube members keeping my installation running on that glorious vacuum energy. Shout out to John for I don't fucking know. And if you want more of this kind of content, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you don't miss any future videos, and consider jumping aboard yourself as a patron or YouTube member to keep the channel alive and kicking. Thanks again for watching. Take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.